Hello, my beautiful friends and my fellow space blobs, sparkly blobs, Leo blobs, sun blobs, whatever form you are coming into this space in today. I am so here for it, truly. Whenever I think about just beautiful spirits being themselves in the world and getting to express that with whatever words and descriptions that feel truest to them, it just makes me really, really happy. We need that. We need that in that world so, so deeply. I'm feeling really emotional as we move through this Leo season, thinking about what it means to lead from the heart, care for others from the heart, be a leader in the world via the heart, and how much we need that. And every single one of you who's living your life in the world, in your community, caring for others and trying your best and being so thoughtful and empathic, it just means so much in this world. And I want you to keep doing that. Like keep going. And I'm feeling that really strongly as we move into this Leo new moon. This is a very harmonious new moon. And it's also a new moon that, for me, is about turning a page and really coming to understand that we are changing and really feeling that at like a core level, accepting it, releasing judgment, releasing shame about the many hats and identities we may have worn to this point, and knowing it's okay to want to keep exploring and expressing. And that, in fact, it's really natural that we're never done. We're never done expressing. We're never done coming into our next form. And that means that we are free to keep changing, free to keep having conversations, and free to keep using our beautiful imaginations to believe in the next beautiful thing. Even when things have gone awry in the past, even when big mistakes have been made, or we feel that there has been a misstep, even when we look at this world and we look at all the history and all the pain and all the things that we as a collective have maybe brought about, and questioning what all that is, not denying ourselves the ability to dream of the next beautiful thing regardless. And that's what we're going to get in here to today. So let's have a beautiful chat about this Leo new moon and create a little bit of space and love for ourselves. This Leo new moon is happening on August 4th at 12 degrees of Leo. And I mentioned in the Leo season discussion that, Leo, the archetype, is all heart-based energy and living life through the vision of the heart, which means getting out of all the machinations of our brain and our ego and all the worries and doubts and fears, and coming into this really centered place, that capital S self that we find in internal family systems and also in mystic traditions throughout the world and the millennia. It comes back to this deep sense of centered care and how dreaming comes about from there and from that place. So I think this new moon is a reminder to come back to that space. I'm going to be doing a practice to bring our energy into that space and to do some daydreaming there over on my Patreon if you want support during this new moon. But this is also a really beautifully harmonious new moon. And it's a place to kind of breathe, because I think so many of us right now are grappling with how we have changed over definitely the last 4 years, I would say, but also even just in the course of this year so far. A lot of us are understanding new versions of ourselves, like new containers, new identities. Maybe we're expressing a new version of our sexuality or expression in what we're wearing or in our relationships or in the creative projects we're doing. We may have had huge revelations about the way that we really want to express in life, and it doesn't look anything like what we were expressing 5 years ago, and it may be surprising to those of us around us and maybe even to ourselves as well. I think so many of us are just like taking that information in as we're moving through this Leo season and like getting used to some of these new ideas that are moving through. I think it's so fascinating how we're always with ourselves moving through life, and we'll still surprise ourselves. Like something new will just come up from deep within us. And it's just like, I did not see that twist coming. And I think so many of us are feeling that. And this new moon is a resting point to integrate that information and understand it for ourselves. And I love the fact that it is this beautiful, harmonious place of breath, of feeling how we feel. And one of the first places we see harmonious conversation here is with a loose sextile with both Mars in Gemini and Jupiter in Gemini on either side of this new moon. So this is a really great conversation. I love anything that is Leo Gemini related because these two play very, very well together. Whenever I think about Leo and Gemini connecting and conversing and exploring, it's all about fun daydreams, trying on different outfits, trying on different ideas, playing around with ideas, not feeling like it has to get stuck in any one position. There being a lot of supportive, playful dynamics in the conversation. And I think that's what we're really seeing here with this sextile with the new moon. And one of the beautiful things about this sextile and this conversation is that it encourages trying on many different hats, and it encourages being many different things at the same time. Like there's no rule that says you can only be this one new thing now, but you cannot also be the many things you've been before. That you can want to be in, let's just say, a committed relationship with somebody, but also want to be your own independent self and maybe sometimes go off on your own. That you can want to have a lot of security and stability and still want to have freedom. It's going to be encouraging you to wear all the different hats that you are and to try on some hats that maybe you don't know if they're going to fit perfectly. Maybe you just want to try it on for a moment and then you say, no, that's not for me. But regardless, this is about giving yourself permission to try on as many hats as you want and to be open to yourself and what you're wanting to try on. This sextile is also a really important moment when it comes to how we have shamed ourselves about the many times we've had to begin in life, or the many times we felt like we have failed or we haven't been able to keep up with something. Beginning again and opening ourselves up to the next self and opening ourselves up to the next energetic wave. Our culture, and I've said this so many times, but our culture has this whole script, which is you figure out what container, you figure out your one purpose, your one identity, you somehow figure that out, I don't know, by the time you're, 25 or something, and then you stick with that. And you do it till retirement and you figured it out, done. And in that script, it's really shameful to begin hundreds of times in a lifetime because it doesn't fit at all. It doesn't fit that mold at all, except that is what life is. Life is beginning hundreds of times over. Life is meeting ourselves every single day and being like, who is this? Who am I? What is this? What is expressing? And this is a release of the shame around needing to begin, needing to fail, needing to quit, needing to try, needing to adjust anything at any point in our lives, and releasing this expectation and this judgment that it needs to be a certain way. And I love that. I think many of us are going to be feeling a release of that. And when we release that, if we feel allowed to begin again, if we feel allowed to try on a few different hats and see how they fit, what dreams come up, what dreams are coming from the heart, from that place that always accepts us. And that is just probably my favorite feeling I've had for a new moon for a really, really long time. The other harmonious aspect of this new moon is that there's a loose trine with the North Node in Aries. So this fire energy is getting lit up. And I just love that because North Node is going to activate where we're getting called to next, right? Like the visions and dreams that are pulling us forward, like pulling our heart forward, pulling what we want to activate and live into our lives, And for me, this trine is all about figuring out what we really need to pay attention to. Once again, a lot of times, with like this internet culture and technological culture, there's all these things pinging at us and it feels like they might all be important, like what to pay attention to. And I think this new moon is really about like zeroing in on what we really need to pay attention to and what isn't important at all. What is just superstition? What is, I need to check my email all the time, or I need to keep up with this project all the time. Maybe that's not important, but maybe showing up to something like an art practice, or just taking quiet time at the end of the day, or whatever it is that's coming up for you. What is calling to you that is really, really important right now? What feels truest in your dreaming as well? I've talked about this all the time, but we have to dream from our true selves, like whoever we are in this season of life. But we can't dream from who we think we're supposed to be, who other people expect us to be, or even the scripts that we get from all the TV shows and movies and Instagram accounts that we have in the world telling us what a beautiful life is supposed to be. Like, this new moon is about re-accessing the version of our dreaming that is truest to ourselves and feeling that deeply. I think this new moon is also really going to be illuminating for some of us where we're headed next. Like, what's going to be important for the next season? What's going to be the big themes? I think a lot of us are going to get very highly intuitive hits of information about where to put our focus. And that could be a lot of information. So take your time with that. Like, sometimes, you get those knowings and it's like, whoa, no, you don't have to do everything during this new moon, but you might be getting really important information about yourself and feeling really, really clear about what you're going to be focusing on next. The final note I have for this new moon before we get into the cards is that this new moon is happening as Mercury stations retrograde in Virgo. And I think that's powerful because this Mercury retrograde is so much about accepting how we're changing and the self-reputation that we sit with behind the scenes, how we treat ourselves, how we honor ourselves, how we listen to our heart, and reflecting on all of that. So we're going to be working with that for the next few weeks as this new moon enters us into that Mercury retrograde energetic. And so for me, this new moon, it's an induction into a season of us really caring about ourselves. And then it matters that we're treating ourselves kindly, and that it matters that we're taking care of our energy, because I know in this space, the people sitting here with me, I'm going to get emotional again because that's just like where I am right now. I know the people sitting here with me are such thoughtful, giving people that are probably doing so much for like their communities and the people around them, and really doing so much more than you probably even realize you're doing. And we forget all the time, so many of us, that it matters that we care about our preferences and our needs, and that we devote a little bit of energy and time to listening to our hearts, listening to our dreams, and knowing that they're not going to hurt other people by listening to those, and just giving ourselves that freedom. And this new moon is about the freedom to dream at its core, without worrying about letting people down, or guilt, or shame, or, like I said, all the beginnings and endings we've been through so many dozens of times in this life. Like, all of that is allowed, and we're allowed to start dreaming about the next thing. And I think it's just a really beautiful pause in the year for that connection and that hearing and that clarity and that daydreaming quality and hopefulness as well. And in some ways, I feel like hopefulness, it feels like almost taboo, because there's just so much going awry in the world on like a very systemic level. But I think this is maybe the most important time ever for that kind of energy. And I'm just sitting here shuffling my deck and feeling through and seeing what intuitive message wants to come through. 10 of Pentacles. I love this card. Culmination, recognition, taking the time to observe and look around. Queen of Swords, honesty, clarity of vision. Let's pull one final one to go along with this conversation. and the Lovers. This card's been coming out in recent weeks. And I think that Jupiter and Mars energetic over in Gemini is really bringing that Lovers energy to the conversation. There's so much going on here because, okay, Ten of Pentacles is really fascinating. This is the culmination of a longer process. This is the 10th card in a whole row of Pentacles cards about building life, being in the world. And there's a couple elements here. One is that, like I've mentioned, this is a new moon that's like, many of us are recognizing this is all that's been built. And now I'm recognizing I've changed again and I'm needing to begin again and express myself in a whole new way and start at the first brick all over again. And the other part of this card is recognizing the ingredients we already have around us that we have started to take for granted a little bit, or maybe we don't see anymore. Part of the architecture of this card is that the people in the card aren't even noticing that there's wildness and beauty and support all around them. So it's a reminder to look for the support in the wildness, in the messages, and the energy, and in anything that might be giving you support right now, and to amplify that. But this is also a card of recognition that one season is coming to an end. And yes, it is time again to start to build. And that's where I think Queen of Swords comes in as well. I actually love this card because Queen of Swords, it's clarity of vision, it's clarity of sight, it's this deep honesty. You know, the truth has legs. So many of us are just coming to that knowing. I have a different way of expressing myself now. I have a different need in my day-to-day, in my relationships, in what I'm bringing forth. And the Queen of Swords is an exhale because when we're able to just have that clarity, we let ourselves know what we know about who we're becoming, the whole world is possible again. And all that we feared in recognizing ourselves, suddenly those fears seem so much smaller and the world is ahead of us. I think the Queen of Swords is also suggesting here that many of us are going to have to kind of forge our own path. And it's a little scary, and it's an individuation process that means expressing maybe some of the truest parts of ourselves that we've ever expressed in our lives. And that brings with it a sense of vulnerability. But then again, what I love at the end of this reading is we have one of the most playful, joyful cards. The Lovers. It is connected to Gemini, and we are working with some very potent Gemini energy right now with Jupiter and Mars over there. And Gemma, this card as well, though, the Lovers, is about individuation. It's about how we learn to express ourselves beyond the established garden, so to speak. What happens when we eat of the tree of knowledge, of life, when we go out there? We have to find out what happens. And what I do love about the Lovers is this is a playful card. It's not a card of judgment and failure. It's a card of individuation and creativity. And one of the things that I really love about this card, and this is where I'm going to end this chat today, is the angel here in the background. Because when you look at this angel, it is there helping behind the scenes, in the hidden, energetically raining down this beautiful energy on these beings who need to go through the process of finding themselves in the world, come what may, and need to try on different hats and need to try different combinations and need to see what that feels like and looks like. And that longing is so natural that it is supported by the divine, not punished. And I think that's a really beautiful place to end this conversation. You might have noticed I'm a little emotional right now in life. And I think it's because everything I've been talking about today is very connected to my own journey. I'm learning about myself, like truly every week is a new week for me. And I'm learning so many different parts of myself. And there's this vulnerability and this tenderness and these big emotions and just processing and releasing. And I feel so connected to other individuals going through that. I feel so connected to you, and I'm really, really grateful for this space. So I hope that you stick around for our next conversations and all the beautiful things we're going to do here. Also, if you want more support, if you are a tender, sensitive dreamer, I highly recommend coming and joining me on my Patreon. I'm doing this heart practice for this new moon, but we're also doing this entire big, juicy, beautiful, wild dreaming series where I'm really giving you all of my personal practices for how I get into my wild dreaming state of mind and how that helps me daydream and envision my life from my home address, from my heart center, not from who I think I need to be. And it's a really special series that I'm working on. Also, this autumn, up here in the Northern Hemisphere, it'll be the autumn. Southern Hemisphere, it'll be the spring. I am starting the minor arcana journey, and we are going to be working through all that tarot goodness. There are some really deep life lessons and rhythms in the architecture of those cards, and I can't wait to share that with you. So I highly recommend going and checking out my Patreon. I will see you back here for our next conversation. I hope you have a beautiful new moon in Leo. I love you so much. Have a beautiful moment in time during this beautiful season.